Hi there, I'm Ahsan A. Shaw, and you're watching me on Facebook and YouTube Live. Today, we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, just like every week. It's actually development in the topic that we have discussed in the last week. In the last week, we discussed marketing and mind manipulation, and today we are going to discuss marketing and mind manipulation through social media. Social media is a very interesting platform. Uh, Not interesting. The exact word should be, I think, we most of the people, even are myself, we are addicted to it. And how big companies and corporations manipulate our minds through social media. And we are going to discuss this topic with Edward Konowicz. He has joined us from Virginia, United States.
Yeah, hi, Ahsan, and those listening.
Hi, hi Ed, how are you?
Good.
Okay, I hope my voice is clear.
It's almost clear. Yes.
Okay, almost clear, not exactly clear.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, and we are going to discuss marketing through social media. And I think the exact it just occurred to me, actually, I was thinking about to add one more thing into it, artificial intelligence. How big corporations like Facebook, Google, YouTube, they have a very sophisticated softwares and algorithms, and they are tracking a one click, every click of all the people, billions of people around the world, and how much one person is spending average time on one post, on particular post, and the average time of people they are watching videos, and how much time they are spending on what kind of videos they watch, what kind of things they like, what kind of things they hate, and all of these things, uh, I think it's an artificial intelligence. Don't you agree?
I agree, and we can get to that point. I wanna develop an insight that most people don't hear about,
Mm-hmm.
and which is when we talk about artificial intelligence and data mining. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
common topic. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are discussing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's important to get people critically thinking so they can
Mm-hmm.
analyze in a bigger or more insightful way what is going on. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'll cover artificial intelligence and we'll cover marketing, but I
Mm-hmm.
think by using analogies in history, I'm a big one on history, we have a
Mm-hmm.
better understanding of, of what we're facing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to use the analogy of a road. When
Mm-hmm.
you build a road, what are you selling?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear me?
Yes,
When you build
when
when
you
you build
build.
a road or a
Mm-hmm.
bridge, what are you
Mm-hmm.
selling?
Mm-hmm. So
When you
they
build a
want
road or
people.
bridge, what are you selling?
Mhm. You want people to pass through it, to pass
You're
over it.
basically selling cars and
Hmm.
trucks.
Yes.
If you build a road,
Hmm.
what did the government? Let's say a government builds a road.
Hmm.
What's it selling? Is selling cars and trucks.
Yes.
So if you build social media, which is
Hmm.
an extension of email,
Hmm.
what are you basically selling? You're selling access, which is you're selling
Hmm.
cell phones, mobile devices,
Hmm.
laptops, computers.
Hmm.
Now that's your vehicle. And then, of course, now that you have your vehicle of your connection media,
Hmm.
there's a lot of different products. I mean, you could be carrying food,
Hmm.
carrying clothes,
Mm-hmm.
And then you're selling basically two types of business.
Mm-hmm.
You're selling voluntary contracts and involuntary contracts.
Mm-hmm.
It's important in business and marketing to recognize the difference between a voluntary contract and an involuntary contract. And a road sells both.
Mm-hmm.
Road sells both voluntary contracts, which is you can have merchandise being delivered in trucks,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have involuntary contracts like policemen monitoring the roads, taxes to pay for the roads, tolls on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to look at social media in terms of a road.
Mm-hmm. So
That's the,
what are those companies are selling? Now the question is,
well, everything is being sold on the internet. I mean, you can
yes,
go
of
to
course it.
Amazon
Mm-hmm.
and I think the major thing being sold in social media is politics. I think
Mm-hmm.
the major discussion is selling candidates, at
Mm-hmm.
least in the United States. The
Mm-hmm.
major product are being sold on Facebook in the United States is either Trump or Biden. They're the major products.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really eventually an involuntary contract. You enter into a voluntary contract, and then that voluntary contract becomes an involuntary contract.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to analyze this in a way that you're not hearing. Why are we here in the alternate media? Is to give you information or analysis
Mm-hmm.
that is very different, totally different than the mainstream media.
Okay.
So I want to approach this from, I don't want to repeat what everyone else is saying.
Mm-hmm.
You can go turn on the TV on a channel and someone can discuss the artificial intelligence, the data mining. We'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to build constructs or a model that gives us more insight than what you're getting on television or in the textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Because the textbooks won't be talking about this. So there's two things of media. Could be a
Mm-hmm.
road, could be email, it could be social media. They're
Mm-hmm.
selling voluntary contracts, which is consumer choices. The second thing that comes with voluntary contracts is involuntary contracts. And it's
Mm-hmm.
the involuntary contracts that threaten us.
So it means what I gather from your point of view, from your analysis, that they sell people voluntary contract and involuntary contract. It just comes with it.
Yeah, it's a natural progression. It doesn't have to
Hmm.
be that way.
Hmm.
But today, we're dealing with a lot of involuntary contracts in the United States. We're dealing with governors that are telling people they have to wear a mask over
Hmm.
their face. That's an
Hmm.
involuntary contract.
Hmm.
They're limiting people in businesses, which is an involuntary contract.
Hmm.
So the real threat to humanity is involuntary contracts when people insist that you have to do something and you don't want to do it. That's pretty
Hmm.
important. So when you build a road, the
Hmm.
first thing you're selling is cars or trucks.
Hmm.
Because if you want to use the road now in the United States, General Motors, which used to make most of the cars,
Hmm.
in order to sell the cars, they didn't advertise at first. What they did
Hmm.
at first was they bankrupted the trolley or electric subways on the streets. They bought up the electric trolleys in United States cities,
Hmm.
bankrupted them, and then sold General Motors buses.
Hmm.
So it looks like it's voluntary. It looks like the buying of buses were voluntary, but it really
Mhm.
was from a planned attempt to control the market, which is
Mhm.
General Motors, in order to control the market, bought up its competition,
Mhm.
bankrupted its competition, which is a common practice.
Mhm.
Today, we have with the internet, a lot of small businesses are being bankrupted.
Mhm.
We used to be able to go locally to buy clothes or shoes. You
Mhm.
can now go to Amazon and order clothes or shoes to be
Mhm.
delivered to your house. So
Mhm.
we have to look at marketing in two ways.
Mhm.
Marketing is destroying your competition
Mhm.
or creating new competition.
Mhm.
They both go hand in hand, and we need to
Mhm.
understand that. And whenever you
Mhm.
develop an access, because social media is an access, those in power who sell
Mhm.
involuntary contracts. The government sells involuntary contracts, which
Mhm.
is you have to buy it, you have to pay the taxes, or you have to follow the laws. And if you
Mhm.
don't, force can be exerted on you. And that's going on now with social media.
Mhm.
Police are actually in the United States are actually, and well, more in Australia, they're actually arresting people for
For
what they
not wearing masks. Mhm.
post on social media. So it's
Oh wow.
important when we talk about marketing, we're talking about two levels of marketing: voluntary contracts and involuntary
And
contracts.
involuntary contracts.
And the artificial intelligence is dealing with
Mhm.
both. So people
Mhm.
were paying Facebook for data that they used artificial intelligence to gather data, which is a database of information, so they could
Mhm.
sell voluntary contracts or involuntary contracts. So I really
So
want to
we.
place the emphasis
Mhm.
that when we talk about marketing, we
Mhm.
have two types of marketing: voluntary
Mhm.
contracts, which is you're going to
Mhm.
choose whether you buy
Mhm.
your shirt or pants from a local store or you buy it online from Amazon or
Mhm.
from some retailer. And then there's involuntary contracts where
That just
people,
comes with it.
it just comes with it, where that
Mhm.
data mining is used for government control, and government control is involuntary contracts.
And
Now,
artificial intelligence is working behind the doors. It's just policing it whether person is following the voluntary contracts or is doing involuntary contract.
well, it is control. I mean,
Mhm.
marketing, we know marketing is about manipulation,
Mhm.
and a certain amount of
And
that manipulation,
I
certain
think
amount of that,
I would like to add is a psychological manipulation. Don't you agree?
well, yes, a manipulation of how you think. It's also
Mhm.
manipulation, in terms of associative learning, which
Mhm.
is you associate one item with another. I mean, it's
Mhm.
in the United States, sexy women are used to sell beer, are used to sell
Mhm.
clothes, and
Mhm.
it, which is you're trying to associate the pleasure of sex with clothing,
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
drinks, with certain
Mhm.
activities. It's sort of like Pavlov's bell, where
Mhm.
you ring a bell when you feed the dog, and the dog associates the bell as food.
Mhm.
So that's done a lot, but that's more done on television. Um,
Mhm.
and this goes back to what you want the emphasis to be, which is social media is largely artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
which is before advertisers would pay for group
Mhm.
marketing. They knew they were marketing to a group of people, usually a
Mhm.
whole country or state. And
Mhm.
now marketing can be individualized to each person.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
And there's two types of marketing. and no
So
one else
what
covers
are
this. See, what we want to do, we are the alternative media.
mhm,
So we have to cover, not have to,
mhm.
but we should cover
Yes.
ideas or concepts
Mhm.
that
So
the mainstream media isn't, because the mainstream media is part of the control and the
mhm,
manipulation, particularly
mhm,
the involuntary contracts. The mainstream media doesn't want people thinking on their own. So there's
mhm,
two types of marketing.
mhm.
And you're not going to read this in the textbook.
So what are those two types? I think we discussed it last week.
There's positive marketing and
Mhm.
negative marketing,
Yes.
which is if you have a product, such
Mhm,
as you're selling drugs,
mhm,
certain doctors may say
mhm,
that drug does more harm than good. It doesn't work.
mhm,
People may say, I took this drug and now I have seizures, or now I have heart problems, or now I have
mhm,
diabetes. So the
mhm,
drug companies, and we know this, I'm not going to mention a major one, actually had a hit list of
mhm,
attacking doctors,
mhm,
discrediting doctors who told the truth about their drug.
mhm,
So the drug companies spent a lot of money in negative marketing, which was
mhm,
attacking, discrediting doctors
mhm,
who criticized their product. And that goes on in all marketing,
mhm,
not in every market, but in all the different markets. You have two types of marketing. You have
mhm,
positive, in which the product is promoted, and
mhm,
you have negative marketing, which is attacking those who are criticizing the product.
mhm,
And social media allows what's called trolls, harassment, people that come in and attack
mhm,
people, criticize them, try to make fun of them. It
mhm.
allows a lot of negative marketing. So
So
one of the major
mhm.
types of marketing occurring in social media is negative marketing, or discrediting people who are
We can
criticizing the
also
product.
we can also say that the negative marketing is about discrediting and creating the problem. First, they create the problem, then the positive marketing comes on the screen. They show you the solution.
Yeah, and that's a good connection to
Mm-hmm.
um, our last interview. In our last
Yeah.
interview,
Mm-hmm.
we discussed how charities, non-government
Mm-hmm.
organizations,
And
foundations are creating
mm-hmm.
the problem, or
Mm-hmm.
exaggerating the problem, like the pandemic. They're exaggerating COVID-19 in order to have an involuntary solution, which is vaccines. Even if you have a choice, the
Mm-hmm.
government is paying, which is your tax. You don't have a choice. The government is buying the
Mm-hmm.
vaccines whether you like it or not, which is the
Mm-hmm.
pharmaceutical companies have an involuntary contract where the government is taking money from you to buy vaccines and you have no choice. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we hope we have choice in refusing them,
Mm-hmm.
but the
But we
pharmaceutical
don't.
companies, particularly through their charities like Bill and Melinda Gates, are
Mm-hmm.
trying to create an atmosphere where you
Mm-hmm.
can't refuse their product, which
Mm-hmm.
is that's an involuntary contract. So the what has been happening in the world is an increase of involuntary contracts and
Mm-hmm.
negative marketing, which is those who criticize the involuntary contracts are being discredited. And I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
major insight that the mainstream media, the television, the newspapers won't cover. Let me
Mm-hmm.
repeat this. The
Mm-hmm.
corporations are trying to increase involuntary contracts where they sell their product and you have to buy it no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And to increase involuntary contracts, they're using negative marketing, which is criticizing and discrediting people who give information that um, basically discourages the buying of the product. So there's really three phases. One, creating the need, like you build a road,
mhm,
you
mhm.
have a need
To
for a
sell.
car or a truck.
Yes. Mhm,
The second level is to create a solution to the need, like a
mhm,
car or a truck, or a
mhm,
cell phone or a mobile device. And the third one is
mhm,
to create an involuntary contract, a
mhm,
situation being mandatory, like where you have to buy a mask.
mhm,
So, artificial intelligence personalizes that. What is the difference with artificial intelligence is
mhm,
that the marketing, which is both the positive and the negative marketing, can now be
mhm,
personalized and organized better. And as a
mhm,
result of that, we're getting more and more involuntary contracts where the corporations are selling directly to the government, removing the
mhm,
choice of the consumer, and then the
mhm,
government can force you to buy that product. So
mhm,
artificial intelligence is increasing that, which is artificial intelligence, like in the novel 1984 Big Brother or in Brave New World. Artificial
mhm,
intelligence is becoming tyrannical, it's becoming a dictatorship through
mhm,
involuntary contracts. And it's
mhm,
becoming, I would almost say, nefarious, which is criminal,
mhm,
by negative marketing. Negative marketing is being used to attack doctors, is being used to attack people who are promoting human rights and choice. So we're dealing with artificial intelligence is just enhancing the negative marketing, enhancing the involuntary contracts. And what we're really being sold is cell phones. That's
mhm,
5G. Social
mhm,
media, and that's even here. We're doing a video. Can
mhm,
your social media and everyone on a cell phone have enough
mhm,
speed, which would be 4 or 5G, fourth or fifth generation? Can they
mhm.
have enough speed to download our video and watch us?
Yes,
And
indeed.
not only for us to watch each other, but for the government to watch us.
Yes.
And you have a large surveillance system where every
Mhm,
movement of a person is watched, every
mhm,
communication
mhm,
is recorded
mhm,
for negative marketing of involuntary contracts.
mhm,
And I think concepts are important. And I've taught at the college level for many years, and it's
mhm,
very important. The tools that we have as a professor, or I was an instructor, the
mhm,
tools that we have to teach at a college level are up
mhm,
here. We're not
mhm,
teaching a car mechanic. We're not giving them screwdrivers and socket wrenches and
mhm,
torque wrenches. We're not giving people um, um, jacks and electronic devices to read the car. We're building
mhm,
concepts. The tools are concepts, and the emphasis here on concepts was first
mhm,
last week, which we're leading from last week. I was explaining that non-government organizations, NGOs,
mhm,
foundations, charity organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates are being used to market products,
mhm,
and particularly as lobbyists,
mhm,
because they want an involuntary contract. They want to demand the public buy their product, like vaccines, and that you
mhm,
have no choice, or buy your
mhm,
product like a cell phone. If the
mhm,
present trend in artificial intelligence continues, and the pharmaceutical industry continues to sell disease. Now, we
mhm,
said that last week.
mhm.
The pharmaceutical industry does not sell the pills or vaccines, they sell the
The cell
disease,
disease. Mhm.
they sell the need.
Excellent. Mhm,
Now that they sold the need and scared everyone there's a pandemic,
mhm,
They're trying to sell an involuntary contract that the
mhm,
vaccines have to be bought by government. You don't have a choice,
mhm.
that your taxes
You have
have
to
to
do.
buy these products. And then,
Mhm,
two, the second level of that is you have to buy them. You have to
yeah,
accept the mandatory and voluntary contracts. So these
mhm,
foundations, charities, and think tanks, lobbyists were
mhm,
building artificial markets and manipulating people's thinking. And the cell
mhm,
phone is personalizing that. Cell phone
mhm,
is becoming a major marketing tool for involuntary contracts, which is pretty soon, like in China, instead of just
mhm,
having money, do I have enough money to take a plane? Do I have enough
mhm,
money to have a fancy car? You're going to have to be
mhm,
evaluated with your cell phone for your social
mhm,
conformity. How many social credits do you have? And if you criticize the
mhm,
government or you're explaining negative marketing or explaining
mhm,
involuntary contracts, you can lose
mhm,
social credit.
mhm.
I think that's kind of
So, yeah.
interesting. What do you think?
So I also think it's very interesting. I think I also watched two or three documentaries on it. The world with the world is full with is filled with social credits. You cannot go to the store. You cannot buy certain type of clothes. You cannot buy airplane tickets. You cannot even have a better life without acquiring certain levels, certain social credits.
Right.
They become necessary for you to achieve to achieve those credits to have a better life.
Yeah, and that's being enhanced with
Hmm.
cell phones. Without cell phones, it'd be very difficult to do. And social media is one of the ways to evaluate your social credit or discredit.
Hmm.
So I think this is a very important interview. I think we
Hmm.
have a very important discussion that affects
Yes.
everyone in the world. So we could talk about how Amazon advertises and tries to sell. Like I just bought a chainsaw,
Uh-huh.
and I
Speaking
bought a
of Amazon,
chainsaw because I have trees and large bushes around my house that I
hmm
have to cut, and
hmm
it takes too long by hand. So a chainsaw is in fact I did this yesterday. A chainsaw saves me hours of time. And now that I'm older, to use a saw back and forth is a big
hmm
effort to cut down a lot of trees or bushes with a handsaw. So now I
I
get
would
all
like to.
advertisements for chainsaw on Facebook. I keep
Okay,
getting
I have also.
advertisements.
There's one thing I would like to mention. Perhaps you would have also observed it on social media and Google. That, for instance, if you are searching for something on Google, then on whenever you the second time you search for something, then you close it down. Then you open the Facebook, and the Facebook shows you exactly the same kind of ads what you were searching for. And if you
Yeah,
visit Amazon would also show you would also show you the same ads what you were searching for. Even though you were using the other platform, it seems like the AI is connecting all of those
I
platforms.
think it looks like AI is connecting all those platforms. But I
Yes.
don't think our concern is someone trying to sell us a shirt
Hmm.
or a chainsaw. I think
Yes.
the concern is involuntary contracts. So I think to some extent,
Hmm.
that's a diversion or a distraction
Hmm.
because
You
people still have choice
hmm
on whether they buy that. Let's say they were searching for um, a pair of shoes and now they're getting shoe advertisements on
hmm
Facebook. Well, you
hmm
still have a
what
choice. In
uh,
fact, that could be
you're
helpful.
Yeah, my point was I was just giving you an example that, for instance, I was searching for watch, and Facebook is showing me the ads of watches on Facebook, and it's just an example that how all of these platforms are connected. If you are searching, if you spend your time watching a certain kind of videos, then the YouTube will show you the similar kind of videos. It's a it's an example of AI.
Yeah, I think AI is playing the major role, and
Hmm.
I don't think I have time to discuss the bigger major role that is
No,
playing.
no,
I think AI,
we-
and I
Mhm,
think your emphasis on AI is correct, and
mhm,
AI could actually destroy the human race.
mhm. No, we can discuss. AI is just an example that uh, how technology has reached to that level that we don't even have a control over it.
Yeah, we not only do we not have a control over it, maybe no one
Mhm,
has control over it.
mhm,
The interesting thing, I forget his first name, but his name was Moore, and he was
mhm,
the head of Intel. Intel
mhm,
used to make the most processors in the world. So if
mhm,
you bought a computer 20 years ago, it most likely had an Intel processor, maybe an AMD, but still,
mhm,
Intel actually had the plants that made the AMD processor. And
mhm.
Moore, I forget his first name, I could look it up. Um,
Okay, no,
he
no problem.
created Moore's Law. Moore's
Mhm,
Law was that every 18 months, the number of
mhm,
transistors would double in a CPU in a processor.
mhm,
And that seemed, no one believed him.
mhm,
Now, when a person who is a CEO usually is kind of smart, I wouldn't
mhm,
say they're the smartest person, but they have an
mhm,
overview we don't have. So
mhm,
they say something indirectly. People are used, like you and I are sort of teachers. We're going to discuss the topic directly.
mhm,
But a person who's not a teacher, who's a business person, is going to say
mhm.
something indirectly. They're not going to tell you the honest, open truth. They're going to say
Yeah.
something indirectly. So when
Mhm,
Moore said
mhm,
CPUs or processors were double in 18 months, he was saying something else. And a
mhm.
lot of people don't know what he was saying because they
So,
don't.
what do you mean?
What he was saying
Mhm,
is that CPUs are like a life form. They're
mhm,
multiplying like rats.
mhm,
They're doubling every 18 months in
mhm,
their power
mhm,
and their ability to compute. They're
mhm,
faster form of evolution than
mhm,
the evolution of mammals.
mhm,
So he was saying that the evolution of artificial intelligence, because that's
mhm,
what the CPU is running programs. Moore was saying the artificial intelligence was growing faster than
mhm,
biological life.
mhm,
So he was implying artificial intelligence was going to take over the world. Now, that's a big implication. And
mhm,
the first thing he was implying was it was like a life form, it was multiplying and increasing like an
mhm,
evolutionary pressure in
mhm,
biology, and it won't be stopped.
mhm,
It will continue. And once we understand that he was saying that, the next step to realize is it would be controlling biological life. It would
mhm,
be evolving faster in terms of intelligence than biological life. So we are sort of facing a science fiction nightmare that
mhm,
artificial intelligence could destroy much of biological life and humanity.
mhm.
So that's what
So,
we're looking at. And I think we see that in Victoria,
mhm,
Australia. People's
mhm,
lives are being destroyed by artificial intelligence.
mhm,
People are being arrested by what they post on social media. They're
mhm,
not allowed to travel outside of the state. They're subject to tyrannical laws and monitoring by police who get out
mhm,
their little mobile devices and check where you've been for the last 30 years of your life.
mhm,
We're dealing with, in Victoria, Australia, with artificial intelligence becoming utter tyranny, utter dictatorship, and destroying human life. And that's
mhm.
largely based now, they're getting more and more based on social media, which is artificial intelligence, is gathering data, data mining, used for involuntary contracts and negative marketing and social credits and social discredits. We're dealing with a 1984 dystopia or Brave New World, and human beings are going to have to somehow try to stop this because it's destroying people's lives. Where the pharmaceutical industries can create an artificial need, actually lie about a pandemic, have involuntary laws, and sell products against our will, like vaccines and masks, and social restrictions, quarantines, force other drugs on people, claiming it's
Mhm.
mandatory. We're now dealing with the rise of artificial intelligence tyranny.
So
And
I
so,
think
whether,
we have
so whether
covered.
so whether
We have
you
covered.
search online for a shoe and then a bunch of
Mhm,
shoes appears in social media advertising us
mhm,
is somewhat of a distraction. Yes, that's
mhm,
incorrect, and it shows you the power of artificial intelligence, but that
mhm.
artificial intelligence now is being used for tyranny.
So it's an AI is an involuntary contracts. Yes,
Yeah,
that just comes
AI
with it.
is an involuntary. Well,
Mhm,
it's sort of an avenue. It's like a
mhm,
bridge, and the
mhm,
involuntary contract rides that bridge or road.
mhm,
It's like a traffic policeman.
mhm,
I mean, before when you had a horse and buggy or a donkey and a buggy,
mhm,
you weren't going to get a
mhm,
speeding ticket.
mhm,
Someone wasn't going to stop your cart and say you went 6 miles an hour. You're only allowed to go 4 miles an hour. That wasn't
mhm.
going on.
Okay.
But now it is going on. You can
Mhm,
be portrayed as a terrorist for
mhm,
disagreeing with the government,
mhm,
and we our criticism, particularly in China, we see that if you criticize government actions, your social credits you could lose,
mhm,
so you can't travel, you can't do much stuff. So we're looking at social media allowing artificial intelligence to create involuntary contracts with tyrannical governments based on artificial intelligence, where every move, everything we say is recorded and and can be used against us.
mhm,
So we're dealing with a tremendous human rights issue, and
mhm,
art, which is anytime we have something like
mhm,
guns made it easier to defend yourself.
mhm,
And I mean, before you can look at Japan with this. To learn
mhm,
karate
mhm.
or aikido
Okay.
would take about 5 years,
Mhm,
and you would have to develop your fists, your
mhm,
surfaces, somewhat like a Shaolin monk in China.
mhm,
This takes about 5 years to do. But if
mhm,
you go in a store and buy a gun,
mhm.
you've
Okay.
equated that 5 years of work with the gun, and the gun is more powerful self-defense. So
Mhm,
why spend 5 years of your life
mhm,
hardening your body when you can go
mhm,
out and buy a gun that
mhm.
would substitute for that? The same thing, you
Yeah.
could have a,
Mhm,
and you have to shoe your horse, you have to take care of it when it's sick, and you
mhm,
can only go about, maybe at most, if you're a good
mhm,
horseback rider, about 8 miles an hour.
mhm,
You go buy a car, you can go 55, 60, even faster miles per hour. So
Mhm,
technology is helpful. The problem is
mhm,
as we get more technology
mhm,
is that involuntary contracts increase.
mhm,
So those in power gain more power,
mhm,
and so it is a battle of information. I as an academic person believe that knowledge is power. That the more
mhm,
knowledge we have, the more freedom we can have, and so it's very important to have the tools of knowledge. And the tools of knowledge, they're up here. The tools of knowledge. It's not a gun. It's
mhm,
about negative marketing, understanding artificial intelligence,
mhm,
understanding involuntary contracts, knowing how to argue your case for human rights and individual
mhm,
rights. So,
mhm,
so intellectual concepts are important to be taught so we have the power to sustain our freedom, which is our choices, that we're not bound by involuntary contracts, which today are being created from the
mhm.
social media with data mining and artificial intelligence. That's a
So
lot. That's
we
a lot to consider.
there's one more thing I would like to mention. The thing about our world in which we are living in, we are uh, we are surrounded by information. The data is everywhere. We receive information all the time. So the question is, what is a good information and what is a bad information? And for instance, if you don't have an analytical skill, if you don't have a proper education or proper solid background, solid knowledge background of understanding the meaning behind the information, then it becomes very difficult for you to decide to come to the conclusion.
Yeah, without the concepts, like I
Mhm,
try to introduce the concept today
mhm,
of negative marketing, which is
mhm,
negative marketing is
mhm,
for the corporation to target people who criticize their product, to discredit
mhm,
criticism of the product is negative marketing. In fact,
mhm,
a large part of social media is negative marketing. And
mhm,
who the people who do the negative marketing are called
mhm,
shills and trolls,
mhm.
TROLLS, trolls. And if
Okay.
you criticize a product or government policy, it's very likely on social media you'll get a troll that doesn't want to discuss the topic, but will attack
Mhm,
your character and will
mhm,
try to discredit you, which is
mhm,
negative marketing, which is to
mhm,
discredit the people who criticize the product. And we know this. We know this from documentation. The pharmaceutical companies are doing this. They are
mhm,
they hire people to discredit doctors who criticize
mhm,
their product. So
mhm,
negative marketing occurs a lot in social media, where
mhm,
slander and
mhm,
incorrect information. And
mhm,
the fact checking is done by the corporations. The fact checking
mhm,
is done by the foundations which are
mhm.
doing the marketing.
Yes,
So we don't
indeed.
have any fact checking. But what we
Mhm,
have is a totalitarian social media
mhm,
where the corporations fund the foundations and non government organizations that
mhm,
provide the fact checking to keep their products and involuntary contracts in power.
mhm,
And the mainstream media that makes its money off of advertising for these corporations is not
mhm.
going to criticize these corporations.
Indeed.
So,
Why
so the
why would
power
they
is going
why
to,
would they why would they criticize it? Because they are earning from it. It's their main source of income.
And this is sort of the double-edged sword, meaning it goes in both directions. Social
Indeed.
media is the outlet or the escape valve for people criticizing these negative marketing and involuntary contracts, which
Hmm.
is um, we should have choice. Government
Yes.
shouldn't be choosing for us. I mean, we understand, and you need common sense. I do
Hmm.
think police, there should be traffic police, and someone who's recklessly driving, let's say, 100 miles per hour in a 60-mile per hour highway should be arrested. They should be
Hmm.
stopped because they're endangering other people. So we
Hmm.
do need regulation. I'm not saying we
Hmm.
don't need regulation, and and we do need a certain amount of involuntary contracts,
Hmm.
but we don't need a lot of involuntary contracts. We
We
need
need
to,
certain amount,
yeah.
a
And I
certain
think
amount of.
even though in engineering and I
Hmm.
prefer science, I think
Hmm.
business analysis in terms of human beings is a better way of doing things. I think we need to use business terminology, marketing
Hmm.
terminology to really
Yes.
understand society.
Yes,
And
indeed.
and so concepts like I introduced today, which is negative marketing
Hmm.
and the idea of the medium itself
Hmm.
sells the vehicles for the medium. So you build a
Hmm.
road and you're selling cars and trucks. You
Indeed.
build social media and you're selling cell phones and mobile devices.
Hmm.
And and people watch us and we're in a we're not using a currency. We're
Hmm.
selling ideas. We
Hmm.
really are. We're selling ideas. And if people
Hmm.
buy them and find them
Hmm.
useful, it's like I bought
Hmm.
the chainsaw and it helped
Hmm.
me. It helped me cut down a bunch of really thick bushes that would have
Hmm.
cost me hours of my time. I did in minutes. So I'm
Hmm.
thankful I have the chainsaw. And we
Hmm.
hope the people listening to us are thankful they now have the concept of negative marketing, involuntary contracts,
Hmm.
and being able to analyze this in terms of service. What services do we want? What services don't we want? And so the
Hmm.
business models, I think, are
Hmm.
superior somewhat to the scientific models
Hmm.
because the business models can analyze politics as contracts.
Hmm.
And it's important. The no corporation would be tolerated going more and more into debt, and yet these politicians and government can put governments more and more into debt because the
Hmm.
business model is not being applied to government,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is we should be looking at the value of our effort, which is economically assessed in a currency, and we should look
Hmm.
at the value of the service that should be offered voluntarily,
Hmm.
and we should look at things in terms of the market and what's
Hmm.
happening, which is your emphasis is the artificial intelligence is
Hmm.
undermining the market. The artificial intelligence is manipulating the market,
Hmm.
reducing free choice, and
Hmm.
manipulating people's thinking. And
Hmm.
I think the number one product of social media, besides cell phones and mobile devices, you don't even have to advertise. You don't
Hmm.
have to advertise. You have social media, people are going to buy cell phones and mobile devices. You don't have to advertise.
Yes.
Is the number one product after that is politicians.
Yes.
Politicians are sold on social media,
Hmm.
and they should be seen as a product. And you have to ask
Hmm.
this question: do I want this product?
Hmm.
And
So you were telling.
is the advertisement correct? What is the nature of
Hmm.
this product? Do I want to buy it? So
Hmm.
we want to get out of the money thing because we don't buy a politician. We don't. Corporations buy them with money, but we
Hmm.
buy them by voting. or
mhm,
supposedly by voting, because we can't get in and verify the voting much of the time.
mhm,
But we're saying, well, currency may not be the medium of exchange. It may be more
mhm,
consent and credibility. And that's what I'd like
mhm.
to maybe cover in our next interview. That
So what
currency
I
is not
mhm,
just money. Currency is also
mhm,
credibility
mhm,
and an exchange rate.
mhm,
And a lot of things that we exchange and
mhm,
we service, it's not based on
mhm,
money, but they
mhm,
still are major factors. So we buy
mhm,
politicians in terms of credibility. Most people
mhm,
do not give money to politicians.
mhm.
What they
So
do is they give credibility.
the question is, why do people buy the wrong product? It is because of the marketing. They
Yes,
are the corporations, they are manipulating, psychologically manipulating the minds of people. So, a mass media at a mass level, and people are just addicted to it, addicted to social media.
well,
They
let
see.
me. Your point is a
Mhm,
major point, and I'm happy you
mhm,
covered that. That's a
mhm,
super major point what you just said.
okay.
We have to look at how people are manipulated, and how they're
Mhm,
manipulated is they're led to believe the
mhm.
majority supports the product.
Yes.
And social media, and this
Mhm,
used to be called sock puppets. A sock
mhm,
puppet was you could put a sock on and pretend you had a puppet. They're
mhm,
talking. You have a,
mhm,
which is one person can be paid by a corporation or
mhm,
by the government to have
mhm,
20, 30, 40, 100 profiles to
mhm,
create the illusion that
mhm,
the majority of people support the
mhm,
product or the policy or the politician
mhm,
or the preference. So
mhm,
social media creates the illusion of a majority, and people
mhm,
are manipulated by peer pressure. People want to
mhm,
do what everyone else is doing. So social
mhm,
media can create a false majority, just like the
mhm,
mainstream media in the
mhm,
2016 US election created
mhm,
the illusion that
mhm,
Hillary Clinton was going to
mhm,
win by 90% or more. They
mhm,
created the illusion
mhm,
that the majority support was to Hillary Clinton, and then
mhm,
Trump won the election. So
mhm,
social media creates the illusion with sock
mhm,
puppets,
mhm,
meaning paid shills and trolls may have
mhm,
10, 20 different profiles.
mhm,
They create the illusion of majority support. And that's a major mind manipulation. People now think two things.
mhm,
They think this position is common and normal when it isn't.
mhm,
And number two, they think someone is being condemned by the majority when the majority
mhm,
actually supports the position.
mhm,
So the mind manipulation is creating a false majority, either
mhm,
pro or con. And
mhm,
people yield. Most people want to be normal, they don't want to be different.
mhm,
So the mind manipulation says, oh, this is normal to do this, and we
mhm.
all agree. But
I
the
think I
all
think
is not everyone.
it is also our it is also in our it's our human nature that we want to be part of society. We want to be part of something bigger than us. So it seems like those social media companies, they are manipulating this side of our emotions, or uh, our side, our instinct.
Yeah, and I want to add something to that. That's a very good
Mhm,
point you made.
mhm,
They're
mhm.
manipulating that human beings have a herd instinct.
Yes.
See this in religion. You can see this in engineering. You can see
Mhm.
this in politics. Human beings
Mhm.
want to do what other human beings are doing. So the herd
Yes.
instinct is to follow what you think is normal.
Yeah,
Because,
we are
like
social
I said, social
animals.
media can create
Yeah.
an illusion of the
Mhm.
majority.
Mhm.
And a little itch on my nose. The
Okay, no problem.
So now what happens, and this is social media is a
Mhm.
virtualization, and I like to talk about this next week. The
Mhm.
virtualization of consciousness, which is if
Mhm.
I before 20 years ago, I would have to practically know you
Mhm.
to do an interview with you, or if
Mhm.
I was,
Yeah.
or you were a news reporter, you would have to
Mhm.
visit me in the United States, or I would
Mhm.
have to visit you in Pakistan for
Mhm.
us to have this exchange. And now we don't have
Yeah.
to do it. We have
Yeah.
virtualization of
Yeah.
that thing. And social media is now
I think
creating.
I
Let me
think it's
make
a
this
very
point.
good thing about social. Okay. Okay.
I think it's both good and bad because we can discuss this
Yes.
next week because it's
Mhm.
another topic.
Okay.
And we're coming off the previous topics
Yeah.
of how marketing people used foundations, non-government organizations, lobbyists to
Mhm.
market through the government. And
Mhm.
today I introduced the term when you build a road, you're really
Mhm.
selling cars and trucks. And when you're
Mhm.
building social media, you're really selling um, cell phones and mobile devices that are capable of 3, 4, 5G in order
Mhm.
to watch a video like this or a movie or something.
Mhm.
But social media is creating a virtual relationship and trying to claim community standards. Social
Mhm.
media is creating the convention of censorship. Without,
Mhm.
I'm part of the community, you're part of the community,
Yes. We are social
you're,
animals.
we're part of the community. So, how is
Mhm.
Facebook
Mhm.
claiming they're censoring based on community standards when I,
Mhm.
the community, or you, the community, don't agree with their censorship?
Mhm.
So Facebook is creating this convention that the authorities can claim
Mhm.
they represent the majority. They don't.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
authorities do not represent the majority, neither does
Mhm.
Facebook. But Facebook is trying to create this convention of censorship
Mhm.
that its censorship is based on the majority, which it calls the community standards.
Mhm.
And so
So.
now, even on TV, this is political correctness. People are
Mhm.
supposed to be censored and fired from their jobs, terminated
Mhm.
if they go against, quote, community standards. But those standards are
Mhm.
not the community,
Mhm.
which is they're substituting the word community
Mhm.
for authority, which is someone in authority, which are the people working as Facebook or the fact checkers that are all in agreement with the corporations are claiming they represent the majority. They're using the word community standards to censor
Or
people.
we can also say that it's a monopoly of power. They have the power. They are using the word community standards to shut people down.
Yeah, they're using
Yes.
standards to impede the flow of information and
Yes,
violate
indeed.
human rights, which is
Mhm.
public access. If you're
Mhm.
serving in a U.S. law, and
Mhm.
we're not under law anymore in U.S., we're under a dictatorship. In
Mhm.
U.S. law, if you have public access in your business, particularly what's called interstate between the
Mhm.
states, then there has to be
Mhm.
civil rights. You cannot impede a person because they're injured, crippled, disabled,
Mhm.
the color of their
Mhm.
skin, or their religious beliefs. You have to service the public without discrimination. And
Mhm.
today, they are violating that. Businesses claim, unless you
Mhm.
follow their rules, which is wearing a mask, you're
Mhm.
trespassing. Well, this is a
Mhm.
violation of civil rights, but
mhm,
they're claiming this is community standards. And the
mhm,
governors, which are authoritative dictators, are
mhm,
giving them the illusion this is
mhm,
community standards, and people
mhm,
believe the majority believe this. And once
mhm.
people think the majority believe it, the majority
The-
believes it. That's
Yes, the
the
majority.
mind
Yeah.
manipulation. To create
Yes.
a false majority, and
Yes.
after you create the illusion of community standards or the illusion of a false majority, people
Mhm,
then want to be part of the majority. So they're
mhm,
manipulated, their minds are manipulated to do the behavior that's
mhm,
the authority wanted. So the authorities wanted Hillary elected, the news
mhm,
media. So they say, oh,
mhm,
by far, the majority wants Hillary, thinking
mhm.
by mind manipulation, the people are going to follow the illusion of the majority. But the
Yes.
truth of it
First of all,
is,
you have to
and
create an illusion of reality. Then that
right,
illusion becomes the reality.
yes, so that's the
Mhm.
virtualization of reality. So
Yes, and we. Mhm.
social
It's a
media
very
is able
interesting.
to create that.
Yes,
And I
and
think
continue, please.
that we went an hour. I mean, we covered a
Mhm,
lot of territory. I think I covered
mhm,
and you covered what you wanted to cover. I
mhm.
mean, we could
I think
go
we
on
have.
4 or 5 hours.
Yes, we can go on and on for hours, but I think 1 hour is suffice for our today's discussion. Don't you agree?
I agree. I think we did a pretty good job.
Mhm,
We don't have any comments yet, but
mhm. Yeah.
I think we
Okay.
covered some new topics. The
Mhm,
illusion of the majority, virtualization of the majority,
mhm,
the
mhm.
use of
There are
chills and
some.
trolls and negative marketing.
Mhm, mhm. There are some other topics, and we will discuss it in the next week.
Yeah, and next week we can
Yes,
discuss some of the topics we touched upon, which is
yes.
currency is not the only means of exchange.
Mhm. And the virtualization of uh, consciousness.
Virtualization of consciousness and
Yes.
virtualization of the majority, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I thought kind of interesting topics. I don't think we
Yeah.
have the time today.
Yeah, we don't have a time today. Well, thank you so much, Edward, for joining us. That was
Okay, thank
Edward,
you.
and he was okay. That was Edward, and he was joining us from United States. And if you have any question, leave it in the comment box below. I'll answer it, or Ed is going to answer it as soon as we can. Thank you, and have a good time.